Good evening and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those affected in their world. These are the children, the parents, the extended family, and everyone who loves them. And our goal is to offer real-life topics and learning through discussing real issues and offering real solutions. And tonight I'm very excited to welcome our guest, who is both a colleague and a friend, Devon Clement, who is a postpartum doula, newborn care specialist, and baby sleep coach with over 20 years of experience supporting new parents and babies, offering practical guidance and emotional support. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her in just a second, but welcome, Devon. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Devon is the founder and CEO of a $1 million plus agency called Happy Family After, which provides in-home services to new parents and second and third time parents in the New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania area, and is currently expanding to new markets in the Northeast and the South. Devon received her newborn care specialist training from Newborn Care Solutions, yay, and has a degree in infant and childhood development as well. And tonight we're going to really kind of dig into one aspect of that business, kind of looking at how Devon did and how she can share with you about breaking that feast or famine cycle, that kind of, oh my gosh, my job's ending, what am I going to do next? So we're going to talk about working consistently and being flexible and getting paid what you deserve in this industry. And I'm really excited to bring this topic because this is something that particularly people who are newer in the NCS world, but even experienced NCS sometimes and doulas wonder about or struggle with. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I think actually what ends up happening to the more experienced people, as you'll hear when I tell you about my journey, is that you end up sort of in that feast cycle where you're like overwhelmed with requests for clients and you end up working nonstop 24s because you just don't know how to say no or how to balance it or how to have your own life. So that's what ended up happening to me. And I'd love to talk about what I do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that we're going to address this whole kind of topic in our time tonight. But before we jump into this, Devon, share with our audience a little bit of kind of your history. I mean, I gave a bio, but tell us a little bit about how you got into this and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think like most people, I was working as a nanny. I had that background and, had a full-time, daytime job. And I really wanted to get more into newborn care. I really loved it. I loved overnights. I loved being able to share my expertise. And I loved getting paid better. But, as you know, newborns are only newborns for so long. So it was really hard for me to get, consistent clients. I'd have a client that wanted me 5 nights a week for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and then sort of nothing until I got my next client request. Or sometimes I'd have 2 people who wanted me at the same time, or I would have like 2 weeks left on a client, and then another client would call me and say, "Can you come, right away?" And I'd be like, "I can't. I have 2 weeks with this person," and then I'd end up referring them out to someone else, and then my 2 weeks, would end up, and I'd have nothing. So it was really frustrating to be able to get that work consistent enough that I could leave my nanny job. And then when I was doing that, to get it consistent enough that I was like always making enough money to support myself and not just like having a great income and then having nothing. And then what happened as I got busier and busier is that I was working nonstop, like 5 to 7 nights a week. And beyond, like wishing I could be in 2 places at once, going from a night shift to a day shift to, back to a night shift. And I was so scared to turn any work away because I didn't know when it was when the stream was gonna dry up, and while I'd be with these clients on these contracts, not having anyone else really to help, I couldn't go on vacation. I couldn't take a day off really. I couldn't, live my life because I was just, working so constantly and so nonstop. And like I knew that that had to end. I was not delivering the best care to the babies. I was not delivering the best service to the clients. I was exhausted, and I was certainly not delivering the best care to myself. So I started working with another colleague and having her kind of support me when I was a little overwhelmed and take some of the overflow. That turned into having 2 or 3 people working with me, where I would basically be able to pick and choose my schedule that I wanted, and they would step in as well. And that was a big change and a big step, because, when it's your reputation that the clients know you by, and that's how people are finding you, referrals from other people, and they're like, well, I want you, I don't want this other person. It can be really hard to make that shift. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from even, having occasional coverage from someone else, or going into a contract saying, I'm not going to work 24/7 for 3 months because it's not good for anyone here. I'm going to do, 4 days on, 3 days off, and you're going to work with this other person. Or I'm going to do 1 week on, 1 week off, and you're going to work with this other person. Even sometimes 2 other people, or like, I'm going to be your 5-day week and this is your weekend. I mean, there's a lot of combinations that can happen. But I made that shift, and now I run a huge team, and they all work together really beautifully. Everybody gets the work they want. Everybody has the flexibility they want, and no one is burned out. And the service that we're delivering to clients is so much better and such better quality than what we were doing before. And I think, I see a lot of people, especially newer people, but honestly, some very experienced people in the industry just getting undercharging and getting underpaid for the work that they're delivering. So I really want to help people, do better when it comes to that kind of stuff, and have the schedule that they want, be able to have this job and have a life.
Fantastic. And I love that you brought that up about getting underpaid. I want to talk about that right out of the gate. Let's talk about rates and how rates kind of impact this whole scenario. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So obviously we're in the New York City area, which is definitely a higher cost of living area. But we also have, as I'm sure everyone in the industry is familiar, the baby nurse culture, where people really want to hire someone to live in with them, seriously underpay that person. We have people here charging $250, $300 a day for 24-hour care, and parents thinking that's a lot. There are some agencies that are like fully taking advantage of people and paying even less than that. And it's just really sad. So like, yes, this is New York, but also there's a lot of competition for clientele, and we are able to charge between $50 and $75 an hour, depending how much the clients book. And then, of course, we pay out to the caregivers from that, and their requested rates are anywhere from 30 to 40, sometimes even more, depending on the situation. The higher end pay is usually for very small things, like people who want 1 night, 2 nights, and then, it's a different situation, or some daytime or whatever. But the big overnights contracts that we're talking about, the big overnight contracts, the live-ins, those things are generally running 50 to 60. Mm-hmm. And we're paying out, 30 to 40, 45.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, I know this wasn't on our list of things to talk about, but maybe for those people who don't have an understanding of how this all works, keep it real short for us, but give us why the agency charges more than the caregiver is getting, so that they have at least an understanding of what you are providing.
That's a great question. And I wish like one of my caregivers was here too, to talk about how much they love the model. We do all the work for them on the business end of things. We bill the clients, we sell the clients. You just work. You just tell me how much you want to work this week, and you work. You do those nights that you can do. And if there's ever an issue with the client, if anything's making you uncomfortable, if there's anything you want to talk about, if you want to take a day off, if you want to take a vacation, we cover that. We get that handled for you. Everything is done. If, when you're booking solo and you say, I want to work 3 nights a week, or I have availability 3 nights a week, and the client's like, well, I really want you 5, you are more than likely going to agree to that. I can say, great, you want 5 nights a week. You have this person 3 nights, you have this person 2 nights. And that's how that works. And I have somebody who works 3 and somebody who works 2 working together beautifully on that situation. Or even if I have you with a client 5 nights a week, because that's what you want, then maybe they're doing 7 nights and someone else is covering on the weekend. So the people that work with our team really love having that, all of that, clients just handed to them,
Right.
all the business end done. All they have to do is tell us what hours they worked. They send us an invoice with all that on it and we pay it.
So in other words, basically, if their passion is babies and supporting families, they get to do what they're passionate about and you handle everything else.
Exactly. And I'll tell you a secret. If this had existed when I started out, I would not have started this. I would have loved to work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I talk to people all the time and I tell them, you have to have a basic business understanding, even if you have no intention of going into business for yourself. But there are a lot of expenses and a lot of risks associated with business that you don't have to deal with if you're working with an agency. And so it's a fantastic option for those people who just say, look, I love babies and families and that's all I want to do. And you are doing it and still providing a really solid wage for people in this industry.
Exactly. And you know what? We're paying for advertising, we're paying for marketing. I'm paying, an admin team that handles the bookkeeping, the client relations, all that stuff. So you have to do nothing.
Exactly.
It's not for everyone. Some people want to do their own thing, but I personally think it's great and my team likes it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I talk to a lot of people who love working with that model, but sometimes people don't understand. So I appreciate you kind of giving some insight as to why the rate you charge the client versus what the actual NCS or doula gets is different because there's work involved, right? And we all like to be paid for the work that we do.
Exactly.
So share with us a little bit more about why that team approach can be beneficial, not necessarily the business end of it, but why as an individual, if I'm looking at working with you and being on your team or another agency who works that way, why is that beneficial to me? Why is that beneficial to the client?
Absolutely. And I think it's not just working with an agency, although of course I love that model. When I started out, it was just me and like 2 other people like working together. So even just having some consistent, colleagues or friends or, one of mine, I was very fortunate to have her. She was a mom to young kids. She didn't need to work a ton, but she liked to work when she could for like some extra money. So she wasn't dependent on it. So some weeks I'd use her like 2 or 3 nights and some weeks not at all because I could cover it myself. And she was fine with that. So, finding those people can be really helpful. It's beneficial because you are better able to get rest, you're better able to take time off, and you're better able to keep your work consistent. Like, I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have overlapping clients. What if you have somebody booked, back to back, and this one wants to extend and this baby comes early? We once had 2 babies due a month apart, born on the same day. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if I was booked for a month with this one and then expecting this, obviously you wouldn't do it that tight, but like, what would I do? I'd have to hand the client over or surprise them at the last minute by saying, I'm not going to be able to work with you. You're going to have Sharon instead, who you've never met or talked to when you were expecting to work with me. So it allows you to keep that consistency of work, never having too much or not enough, and really staying within that balance. And again, you want to take a week off. You want to go on vacation. You're sick and you don't want to leave the client high and dry or God forbid, go to work sick, which I know sometimes people do. I did it like, I'm getting over a cold, but I got to get back. They need me. They want me to come. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm miserable. So it really lets you have a life. And I know we love to work in this industry. We love it, but the difference between seriously, it was like a traumatic period in my life when I was working every single night and a lot of days and sometimes around the clock. It was not healthy for anyone. And I don't want to see other people in the industry getting burned out and just not having a life for years on end.
Yeah. And, the other aspect of that, the flip side of it is when we as caregivers are working that hard, that burnout, not paying attention to our own needs, we're not bringing the best to our clients either.
Absolutely.
And as passionate and as committed as we are to supporting families in the optimal way, we can't do that if we're not healthy ourselves. And so that is another benefit, in my opinion, to the client, not just to us as caregivers, is they get the best of us instead of, not quite the best, no matter how
Absolutely.
we are.
And I'll tell you in retrospect, it was never like dangerous, thankfully, but we like to sleep condition the babies. If I'm with you 24/7, like I'm just going to get up at night and feed that baby or give that baby a pacifier. I'm not working on sleep conditioning because I'm so exhausted. I just want to get back to sleep. So that, that sort of thing really is something that we want to do. We want to bring to the table. But to your point, this actually brings up something else that's on your list, but I feel like we should jump to it now. That's a big selling point for the clients. I get a lot of potential clients calling me and saying, well, we want to work with just one person. We don't want a team. And I'm like, you want 7 nights a week. If you have just one person, you are not going to get their best. Mm-hmm. And what we really want to provide to you is people who are at their best because they're getting paid enough that they don't need to work, because that's a big problem with the baby nurse model too. They're undercharging so much that they're completely overworking themselves, falling asleep holding the babies, not waking up when the babies cry, like really problematic things. And I just don't like to see that for anybody in the industry. So being able to have that as a selling point to the clients, even when they're saying, well, I want just you and only you, really makes a big difference. And they're always like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I don't know how I thought someone could really be like functional working that much.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's not that they're bad people. They just don't think it through all the way, or they think, well, if you're doing this, you must have a way of doing it that it works. And so especially having a third person, like somebody from an agency like you or one of your staff, explaining that to them really can help them understand in a different way. Sometimes people need to hear it from a third party in order to really internalize it.
Exactly. And I think part of the issue is they talk to people, solo caregivers, who are willing to do that. So we also have to change it from the inside out, right, in the industry and say, we're not doing this anymore. We are not, I just can tell you so many stories. I'm sure you've heard a million too, of colleagues who just got so completely burned out. They like quit the job early or, whatever was happening. And the clients don't want that.
Uh-huh. Right. For sure. So if somebody says, hey, I'm new to this world, or, I'd love to have more consistent work. Maybe I want to, excuse me, maybe I want to talk to an agency. Can we talk a little bit about kind of what the different agency models are out there? Because different agencies do it different ways. And a lot of people want to know more about what that works and what it looks like.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And just quickly, another benefit is for newer people. Like, I'll take someone newly trained with a little bit of experience and get them working right away. And they'll be working with someone with more experience who's like mentoring them and helping them, grow. I mean, people can get experience with 3 or 4 different clients their first month on the job sometimes, right, and really build up very quickly. So that's another great benefit if you are a newer person in this field. Right. So I actually really
Devon, can I ask you a quick question around that before we hop into agency models?
Yeah.
So if someone is new and maybe they've only worked one job, or they had a lot of like infant nanny experience and they took training as a doula or an NCS and they're new and they come to you, are you charging them to work that kind of position?
No, they're getting paid, not the same as the most experienced. Right. Everybody sets their own rate, and it is based on, your experience in the field and things like that. And how long, you've been doing this and how long you've been working with me. But no, not at all. I'm sending them to clients and they're working just like anybody else. Right. And I'm able to pick and choose clients that are going to be a really good first client for you, like that family with the third baby that just wants to throw it at you when you walk in the door and see you again in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just asked that because I've encountered that a few times with our students who then apply to an agency in their area, and then they're told that for the first month that they work, all of their income goes back to the agency because they're being mentored, or they have to pay $1,000 a month agency mentoring fee. And it's something I've only encountered in the last year, and I was like, what the heck? So I always wanted to make sure.
No, I haven't even heard of that. That's crazy. I would never do that.
Yeah, so I want people to know that most agencies don't do that.
Yeah. So speaking to the model, I actually kind of hate the term agency, but it just makes sense for
Right.
what we do.
Right.
I like to call it a team because that's really what we are. I think of an agency as, for instance, a nanny agency that's placing you in a long-term position. You're really like never interacting with the agency again until you need another job. They're not involved. They just keep a rotation. They pull you in, off the street. They pull, you apply to the job online and they send you out. What we do is, when you work with us, you're really working with like the whole team. You're working with different clients, you're sharing jobs with different caregivers, you're getting experience, learning from different people. You're being mentored by me and by the other, most experienced people on the team. So I really like that approach. There also are obviously newborn care specialist agencies, nanny agencies that do just match you with the client, and then you do all the work yourself and the agency charges a fee. And I've gotten jobs through those agencies and it's great, but you are handling all the business side of things yourself. And that is a big difference between like that sort of agency and our agency, where we're taking care of all of those details and you're just going to the client and showing up and being amazing. And so that's really the two, I think, major different models that we see. And then I know there's like, people who refer jobs and you pay them like a referral fee, which I think is also very valid. Like I have a good long-standing reputation. I get referrals all the time. If I were working solo and I couldn't take those, my team couldn't take those jobs, I wouldn't have an issue charging someone a small referral fee to hand them that client. Because we put a lot of time, energy, and money into getting clients. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I can't speak to, a lot of different types other than what I'm familiar with, but, just find what works for you.
Absolutely.
I do think that with the placement agency model, it's probably a little harder to work as a team or work with someone else, unless you come in with that and say, here's my deal, like me and Sarah are a team. I work 4, she works 3, or we just, make the schedule work out. It's going to work for us. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know there are placement referral agencies that do that. And they explain to the client basically the same thing that you do, that asking somebody to work 24/7 for 6 months or a year is just not doable or healthy or beneficial for anybody. And so really they need to have a rotational schedule, or they need to have a day shift and a night shift or whatever. So I know some agencies do that. Every situation is different. And I love that you said, find what works for you. And so, it is one of those, look at what you need and look at whether or not the agency or the team or whoever you're working with can help meet what it is you need as an individual, for your financial and your physical and emotional health. Absolutely. So we have talked a lot about that. And you already brought up one of the other things I wanted to talk about how to handle it when a client asks for one caregiver, because that happens to me also. And I get it. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share, or any like one takeaway that you'd like to leave for our audience?
I think the biggest takeaway is that you have to really value yourself and the work that you're providing and the service that you're providing to clients. And don't let yourself be taken advantage of just because you really need to work or you want to work or whatever. I see people booking out a job that starts in 6 months at like a super low rate that's very demanding just because they want to have that security that they've got work lined up for the next year. And they're willing to accept these just really borderline abusive positions sometimes just so that they can feel secure. And I really want people to be better advocates for themselves. And if you feel like you're not a person who's good at that, who's good at setting boundaries or having those conversations, reach out to someone who is. Like I tell my colleagues all the time, even if you don't work for my agency, like I'll do your sales for you. Like I'll talk to your clients for you. I'll do your negotiations for you, because I want you to know that there is always good work available for good people. And you do not have to accept poor treatment or stretching your boundaries or doing anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or does not let you provide the top-notch care to the families and babies that you expect to provide.
Absolutely. And I love that you offer that help. We try, obviously, through education and through all the things that we do, we try and provide that as well. But, I'm only one person, you're only one person. And I love when I hear that other people are doing that also in order to help really support people. Because at the end of the day, yes, we want to serve babies and we want to serve families, but people can't do that if they're not also serving themselves and taking care of what they need to. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and this is such a loving, caregiving, nurturing profession. It's hard to have that aspect with the babies and parents, and then also be like a hard ass when it comes to business. It took me a long time, a lot of coaching, a lot of training, a lot of just experience. So, lean on people who have that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Devon. It is always fun to chat with you anyway, but it's great to have you share some of these insights with our audience. I know that they love getting that information. And if you, as our audience, have any questions for Devon or anything related to this topic tonight, or maybe you're interested in reaching out about maybe working with Devon, all the information will be in the feed or in the bio there. And you can also tag Devon or Newborn Care Solutions with questions in the feed, and we'll make sure that you get answers. If you're wanting to rewatch this segment or catch any of our other educational content, hop on over to newborncaresolutions.com and click on the education tab, or head over to our YouTube channel. All you have to put is Real Talk Newborn Care Solutions into the search engine, and all of our past episodes come up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a great evening. Good night.